Hello, Gauteng. My name is Nazli Sharif, and today we are coming to you live from Johannesburg to discuss Gauteng's water crisis. Water is a basic human right given to us by the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Yet, we find too many people in Gauteng that go for days, weeks, and sometimes years without water, and this is unacceptable. Please make sure you like and share this broadcast with all your friends and your family, and please, if you have any questions or comment, drop it down on the link below and we'll be sure to engage in your comments and your questions. Please don't forget to use the hashtag #NoDryTapsGauteng to make sure that we get the message across to every single person that we know. I'm joined today by the DA Gauteng Provincial Leader, Msimanga, as well as the Shadow MEC for Infrastructure, Nico de Jager. Now, Solly, let's jump straight into it. Why do we find ourselves in the situation that we do, and how did we get here?
Well, look, I think you need to go back into history. And the history has been that development has taken place, but development hasn't really taken place, pre-1994, hasn't taken place in a manner that ensured that we are planning for the future where we're able to then put enough infrastructure, right? So there was infrastructure, it was maintained, but it was not reaching everybody. So that was the first thing that I think we need to then accept. The second part is that when the ANC took over, there was never really a long-term plan in terms of the growing population. How do we cater for that? And you see that in a number of ways. The crisis we've had with electricity, the crisis now we're having with water, is that you don't cater for a growing population. So you know that you are going to then expand from Joburg. You're going now to the west. You're going to expand to go to the south. In Tshwane, you are now going to Kongwini, Bromosprate, and the areas and so on and so forth. It goes, but there was never really a plan in terms of how do you maintain the infrastructure that you have? B, expand on the infrastructure that you have so that this infrastructure is able to, withhold, the challenges and everything that is coming across. And more than that, you needed to then have a preventative maintenance plan. So you needed to then say, how old is this infrastructure that I have? When do I need to start really doing pipe replacement or actually then expanding on what you have? And I'm sure Nico will talk to, this demand that is there, and then people saying, well, can just increase the pressure or you can just increase the amount of water. It's not as simple as that, because you needed to then be able to then ensure that whatever you're increasing, your system, your infrastructure is able to then take care of that. You also now have a situation where you are losing so much of this, the precious water due to technical issues and issues of illegal connections, issues of water that you lose underground, and so on and so forth. It goes, and these are all issues that are just getting combined and compounded, and they become bigger and bigger issues. Mm-hmm. And when you start asking yet again, what is the plan? There's just no plan. There's just no plan in terms of dealing with this thing holistically. It's like everybody's now working in a little bit of silos. Ekurhuleni is doing its little thing, Tshwane is doing its own little thing, Johannesburg is doing its little thing, all the smaller municipalities are all doing their own little thing. There's nobody who's saying, what is the long-term plan? What is the infrastructure master plan? And how do we then ensure that there's an infrastructure master plan that is costed, that we're able to then also say, where do we start, where are we going, and what is success going to look like, and then work our way from there. And this is where the problem comes from.
Yeah, Nico, your thoughts?
What Solly is saying is quite correct, and we've often spoken about the infrastructure master plan. As long as there's no such a plan, a coordinated plan, coordinated by the provincial government, to guide municipalities in their spending. We will be back here year on and year and every year to discuss the same thing. We had a discussion earlier today, Solly and myself were in a meeting where we discussed the fact that there is no coordination between the different municipalities. It's long gone that we have clear borders in Gauteng. Whether you live in Tshwane, Joburg or Ekurhuleni, Mogale, all these municipalities are so close together that you can no longer develop without a coordinated plan where systems speak to each other. Because as demarcation changes, etc., you will find a situation where new areas will not speak to previous areas that was previously in a different municipality.
Yeah.
So that coordinated approach is absolutely critical. That, and the fact that as development happened, developers are supposed to pay bulk contributions. Those bulk contributions were never ring-fenced to service the area that's now being developed, meaning that those areas were often then left behind. The new developments or the old infrastructure couldn't carry the demand on the old infrastructure. And that's led to where we are today. Lack of maintenance and the bleeding of technical skills. I cannot stress that enough. We are prioritizing academic qualifications over technical skill, and we do that through cadre deployment. That is why we are where we are today.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit more about the lack of infrastructure and maintenance and whose responsibility that essentially falls to. Because who do we hold responsible for, say, not having or at least coordinating the master plan?
And you see, this is where I said right in the beginning that until you have a master plan, you wouldn't know what you're working with.
Sure.
So now municipalities in certain instances are estimating what the costs are. If you then to say, I'm developing an infrastructure master plan, you will go and look at all your pipes as an example and say, how many kilometers of piping do I need from this area to that area across the province, right? You will then say, how many reservoirs do I have? How many of them are still suitable to hold water right now? How many of them do we now need to then build up? Because now we have water, but there's no catchment. So we don't even have spaces where once we have clean water, that we're able to then, store somewhere. I think that's one of those things that you need to then have as well. But also you need to then have a situation where you understand where development is going.
Gotcha.
If you don't understand where development is going, you cannot then plan for your bulk infrastructure then going forward. And therefore, you can then cost it. And once you cost it, you then say to municipalities, so this is where development is going in your area. Mr. City Manager, please ensure that your utilities manager and human settlement manager are actually talking to each other. The MMCs are talking to each other. But not only that, they must have a plan that we all able to then bring into a provincial structure that is able to then say, all right, this is where we are going to be planning for water. This is where we're going to be planning for other bulk services, electricity, roads as well. But because there is no plan, we are actually then more reactive in what we are doing in government right now, that it has become such a epic failure that if you ask, how much have we spent on bulk infrastructure? Where is the bulk infrastructure? How old is the bulk infrastructure? What are the challenges with the bulk infrastructure? You're not able to then get that. Or you get municipalities, Nico was involved, would tell you about Johannesburg. But what is the connection between Johannesburg and Tshwane? What is the connection between Tshwane and Ekurhuleni?
Yep.
What is the link between all of them? Is there somebody coordinating? And there's nobody. So you will not be able to then hold one single person accountable. You need to then have a plan that has all the role players not working in silos, but able to communicate with each other and able to then draft plans that, fortunately, or let me say unfortunately, none of the municipalities at the current stand, and Nico will talk to that, none of the municipalities will be able to then fund their infrastructure plan now. On their own, none of them was going to do that. Johannesburg needs, 200 million? 200 billion, actually, to deal with the infrastructure. Tshwane has got, close on 150 billion, Ekurhuleni and so on and so forth, it goes. And therefore, you now need to then say, well, even if we do nothing for the next century, we will not be able to then deal with this thing and address it, right? But how do we then say, how do we combine our efforts? Raise enough funds for infrastructure, nothing but infrastructure, able to then have a proper project management in place with a team, as Nico has said, technical expertise, people that are coming in, but also ensuring that you have the hands of thieves kept away from that.
100%.
And then you'll be able to then start making some headway.
100%. Nico, it seems like a no-brainer when Solly speaks about coordinating between municipalities to make sure that things are getting done, money is being allocated to fix the infrastructure and maintenance. It seems like a no-brainer, but that's not what's happening, right?
That's absolutely. We need to have an integrated governmental relationship that works. And it can be done through the coordination of the COCTA department in the province. But unless, as we've said now at length, unless you have that coordinated approach, it's not going to happen. I think it is absolutely critical that we then also understand what maintenance means. It's maintenance on your reservoirs, maintenance on your pipelines. In Johannesburg, and I'm sorry if I use Johannesburg as an example the whole time, but I know Johannesburg best. We've got just over 12,300 kilometers of water pipes. In the last financial year, Johannesburg replaced something like 27 kilometers of water pipe. Now, conservatively, in the past, you should replace at least 150. But if you replace 100 kilometers of water pipes, it's going to take you more than 102 years to replace.
102 years.
Remember, this is on infrastructure that's not even 100 years old, and this is what we're suffering. Now, it's never going to happen. So you need to have that coordinated approach to actively replace your water pipes. That's the minimum of at least 300 kilometers of pipes a year. And it can be done because in between 2016 and 2019, when the Democratic Alliance was in control of Johannesburg, we moved from just over 1% of the 8% norm set by National Treasury to close to 4 and 5% of replacement of infrastructure. At that time, we replaced just over 300 kilometers a year. That was in the 2018-19 financial year. So it can be done. And if you can get to that benchmark closer to the 8% norm, we can eat away at this elephant. But unfortunately, in the last financial year, when the water entity, Joburg Water, asked for 3 billion, bulk of that would go to refurbishment. They got 1 billion for capex. Now that 1 billion doesn't go all the way to replacement of pipes and the reservoirs. It's also for new connections to bring people on board who'd never had water before. So we have a problem where in my opinion, the politicians, the executive mayors, and the MMCs play God. And instead of focusing on the core function of municipalities, which is water, electricity, sanitation, roads, transit, the basic service delivery, we start having these fancy projects. What do we call them? What's that? Fancy projects where the mayor...
Priorities, the key priority projects.
Their key priorities, which are not their funded mandates. We sit with situations where they come up with these fancy 83 billion rand budget, unfunded. But come the mid-year review, so come November, there's a downward adjustment to that budget. And it is our residents who suffer as a result. Absolutely. So we cannot play games with residents. It comes back to that when we talk about 46% of water in Johannesburg being lost, where's the water? 46% loss. Now, they talk about technical and non-technical losses, but we shouldn't even have that. We shouldn't even have the non-technical losses. Non-technical losses being meters not metering correctly, or informal settlements where people use the water, but it's not metered. But the burst pipes, more than 24% of our water is lost because of leaks and reservoirs and pipelines. So, unacceptable.
So, Solly, we've laid down the problem. We have issues of infrastructure, we have issues of maintenance, we have issues of politicians misdirecting funds where they're actually supposed to be directing it. We have municipalities blaming residents for the lack of water and water loss. We've set out the situation. Now tell us, where do we go to from here?
Well, one of the things that we had started doing, myself, Nico, and the team, is that we have started, we put a part of the infrastructure master plan together in terms of what needs to happen. We are now pushing for this through COCTA. We're asking questions in our oversight committee of this, because we're asking now to get budgets in terms of maintenance. We're asking what are the municipal plans, because we want to say to the MEC, you will not be able to deal with these things in a manner that you have been going about it. I mean, you are now continuously saying to that municipality, tell me what your plan is, and then forget about them.
Yeah.
Go to the next one, tell me what your plan is, and forget about them. It's not going to help. It's not going to work. Everybody needs to understand that your source of water in Gauteng, mainly, not all of it, but mainly, comes from one area, right? And therefore, you now need to then be able to then say, how do I connect everybody from the source and make sure that I don't lose as much? But also make sure that once you start a program and a project of replacement and refurbishing and actually having a new infrastructure, water infrastructure plan, that municipalities are then put on terms, because you need to put municipalities on terms and says, once you start experiencing savings, these savings don't mean that you now go onto fancy projects that you cannot then account for. Each and every cent that is actually then saved, when you, as Nico said, when you start now reducing your technical losses, you now need to then say, how do I then reinvest this money so that I can reinvest into the infrastructure then going forward? That's what needs to happen. You need a coordinated thing from a provincial perspective that says at a provincial level, how do I then raise a capital for all of them? Because if we're going to do this thing piecemeal, it's not going to help, because you're just going to help here. We can, but it's not going to, it's really going to take forever. As Nico had said, just in Johannesburg is going to take 102 years also. Imagine if we were able to then say, let's have a fund which we able to then look at and able to then raise enough money for, and then whatever it is that we are going to then generate as savings from there, it now needs to then go on to then furthering the expansion of this infrastructure. Mfuleni, as an example, right now is owing rainwater billions of rands, right? And we are also now, because of the inability of circulating and having the right amount of water, you now end up having blocked sewer lines and all of that, which ends up also flowing into your river system, into the Vaal River system, which then now exacerbate the problem. I don't want to scare people, but if we're not going to address this holistically as a province, I promise you're going to have more cholera outbreaks, because now more and more people are not going to have water as they should be having water. We're now going into the summer period. You know what happens during this period. And the more that you're having now, sewer being pumped into our river systems and all sorts of things that begin to then happen because you don't have enough water, that is available to people, it's going to create problems. So once the MEC and the Premier understands that the problem cannot be addressed by municipalities on their own, and therefore you need to call everybody and say, come around the table and let's sit around and come up with an infrastructure master plan. As I said, myself, Nico, others have worked around this. We're happy to present this. We're happy to then say, can we talk about how do we get a plan together? Can we talk about how do we then go out to the market and say, how do we raise enough funds? Where will the savings come from, so that you're able to then show some income that you'll be able to then service? If it's a debt, we can then service that debt. But at least you would know, A, you're not going to have prolonged water problems, in Gauteng. But B, you will also be able to then secure Gauteng of the future by ensuring that even if there is expansion, you are having now enough money to then plan for 50, 60 years of what Gauteng should be. I can tell you right now, that's what apartheid did. As much as, we can say whatever we want, one thing they knew is that Rooiwal, which was built 60 years ago, they could take care of it. Even though that it was not catering for everybody, they made sure that it was able to then cater up to doubling of the population right now. But the ANC doesn't have a plan to then say, from where we are now, how do you then take care of the next double cycle that is going to take place? And until we get to that stage where we have an understanding that this needs to happen, I promise you we're going to sit with the same problem like we said with Eskom and all these power stations. And then you're going to have a last minute rush where billions and billions are, sicked from all over, which then leads to a lot of corruption. Projects that are supposed to cost X end up causing Y or Z. And that is something that we're going to need to be very much on the lookout for.
I mean, Solly, it is scary. As a resident of Johannesburg, Nico, and I live in Johannesburg South, and people in Johannesburg South hasn't had water for weeks on end, and it's continuously said the reservoir is not completely full. It's always excuses. Always excuses. Now, it's great to hear, and a message to the Premier. The DA has a plan. All you have to do is come to the table and listen to what we are saying so that we can help you as a province get there. Can you tell us a little bit more about what the DA is doing and a bit about the water campaign that we've just launched? Don't forget to use hashtag No Dry Taps Gauteng. Please, let's get it trending. Let's speak about it. Tell us a little bit more about the campaign.
I just want to go one step back.
Please.
Back in 2019, in Johannesburg, we took a decision that because the Aikenhof substation or Aikenhof plant continuously ran out of water, continuously had power interruptions, we took a clear decision. We are going to refurbish all our old transformers, and we started on the 1st of July. We got the new budget. That's what we started with. Lo and behold, a month later, the Aikenhof substation blew up. No electricity.
Wow.
And what would have taken us weeks to restore, because we had a refurbished transformer could be installed immediately. Water was restored almost immediately. We call that proactive maintenance. That hasn't happened. And that's where we sit, where we are today. Now we hear that residents are using 238 liters of water per person per day.
Wow.
It's absolutely ridiculous.
Because it's easy to blame residents.
All
right?
you need to do is do the calculation, 42% or 46% of 238 liters, and you will see that the residents are actually only using 160 liters of water, or a little bit less than that, far less than the international norm of 173 liters of water. So no, residents are not using too much water. It is the lack of proactive maintenance that is causing the drama, the fiasco that we have on our hands. Your question was before I...
Tell us about the DA's water campaign.
Water campaign. The water campaign is really for us to focus on the issues. Now, what are the issues? Cadre deployment.
Yep.
That's the issue. The fact that we have non-technical people in a position of CEO of Johannesburg Water, a person with absolutely no background or expertise in the water field are guiding and setting the operations, head of operations in the entity. That cannot be. You have a board of directors that's made up of a secretary. Now, no disrespect to a secretary, but come on, we need professional expertise. And again, when the Democratic Alliance was in charge of the portfolio, I can assure you we had engineers, we had professors, etc., all in the water space, doing what needed to be done. Professional people who could actually take us forward. Cadre deployment brought us to where we are today, and political interference. You have a mayor who's absent. We haven't heard the mayor speak on the water crisis.
Yep.
Like, I know Solly challenged the Premier. He hasn't spoken about it.
Yep.
It's not his problem. It is your problem when you are not doing what you're supposed to do and being more involved with the budgets of the municipalities. When the municipality is not spending 8% of their budget on refurbishment, surely you cannot just stamp and say approve that budget. So those are key issues on the campaign. We want to highlight to residents that it's not their fault. It is the fact that this campaign is focused on what we believe should be done. We are not doing the job of the ANC. They must do it themselves. But we want to know, our residents know, that we're siding with them and we're highlighting as and when problems are happening. We've gone out making a whole lot of videos, making sure that residents know that we're on top of it. And we are advising and bringing that information to Johannesburg Water, to the Department of Water Affairs in Tshwane, the same with Ekurhuleni and every other municipality. But it's not only about the water, it's also about the sanitation. As Solly's already alluded to, the whatever flows into our rivers, the polluting our water courses, and eventually that will also have an impact on the available water in the province.
Yes. So basically, action has to happen right now. It should have happened years ago, but right now. Solly, you spoke about the master plans and driving this through the provincial government, but you've also requested the provincial government to make municipalities' budgets that is allocated to water infrastructure made public. Why is that?
Well, it is important so that you know what is actually budgeted for in terms of maintenance, what is budgeted for in terms of the expansions that now needs to then. Remember, you also now need capital expenditure for you to expand. It's not regarded as maintenance. It's regarded as now capital investment into your new bulk infrastructure. And we're not only talking about pipes. There's a need to build more reservoirs in Gauteng. There's a need to then keep the ones that are leaking. How do we then make sure that we're able to then maintain them? So how do you know that this has been done if you don't know what budgets are available?
Gotcha.
And now it cannot be that we do things haphazardly, like, oh well, when I feel like it, or when there's something that goes wrong, that's when I react. You now need to then have a proactive call it plan going forward in terms of how you deal with this. And you deal with it by knowing exactly what you have, by knowing exactly where you're going, and by then being able to then have people in place that are going to be able to then monitor the progress that needs to be made. But here's the thing. I want to call on Panyaza Lesufi. I want to challenge Panyaza Lesufi to a debate around the issues of water around Gauteng. It cannot be that you're burying your head in the sand, sir. Gauteng water problem are becoming bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's going to become a huge challenge. I'm challenging you to a debate. I'm challenging you to a discussion where we are able to sit around and come up with plans in terms of how we can assist municipalities to deal with this thing once and for all. Stop hiding, stop dealing with issues that are not really that important. If you're not going to have water, you're not going to have life in Gauteng. If you're not going to have water, you're not going to have jobs for the people in Gauteng. If you're not going to have water, you're going to have crises and diseases in Gauteng. When we had COVID, it's going to look like a child's play when you don't have water. I challenge you to a debate. I challenge you to a discussion. I challenge you to a roundtable, including some of the people that we've been engaging with around this particular issue, and then we can come up with the solutions to the people of Gauteng. It's up to you to then accept the challenge.
Yep.
Thanks.
There we go. Up to you, Premier Lesufi, to accept the challenge. Solly, I just want to speak a little bit about Midvaal, because Midvaal has a lot of success stories. Tell us how the water situation is currently in Midvaal.
So first of all, they have a less than 24-hour turnaround in terms of when there's leakages. Mayor Peter Texera and the team have actually then invested now on additional capacity. So now they've even built a reservoir that is called the spare reservoir, right? They've got a spare reservoir. So because they're already thinking what happens in the future. Now there's expansions in Savannah City and all of that, and they're saying, well, this expansion, as it grows and as more people move towards a city that is working or towards a municipality that is working, you are going to need to then have infrastructure to be able to then take care of that. They've invested now on additional infrastructure. They're investing now on the additional reservoir there. They're investing now on more piping, that needs to go in there. But more importantly, they're investing in their people.
Yep.
They're investing in making sure that you have engineers, you have people that have the technical know-how. I've met with the people, young people who have been trained technically to deal with these issues.
Yep.
And that's what you need. You don't need politicians. You don't need people that, are cadres to be sitting there and to be dictating who gets what tender and all of that. Yet at the end of the day, the impact of them being there is not felt by the residents who are supposed to get better quality. And I think this is what Midvaal has been able to then get right. And this is why you now need to then say, going forward, what does development in municipalities look like? Municipalities understand their development. Do they? Don't they understand the development and where it's supposed to be going? What are we putting in place to then deal and cater for that development? What does a Joburg of the future looks like?
Yeah.
And I think this is what most people fail to understand. If I cannot think about what the city looks like in 50 years' time, I'm not going to be able to then plan for it.
Absolutely.
And this is something that I think Midval has managed to, to get right. Not only are they investing for now, but they're also investing for the future. And this is what is going to be important. You need to understand what your cities look like, what your province look like, what kind of infrastructure investment needs to go in there. How do we then make sure that we're able to then start building that, that bulk infrastructure? And then it goes beyond water. It goes to, roads. It goes to electricity. We're now having a gridlock here in Gauteng, and it's getting worse and worse, where you are now spending an hour, 30 minutes to move between Pretoria and Johannesburg. They told us that Gautrain will actually decongest the roads. It hasn't done that.
Yep.
So what is then the plan? We have a premier that talks about having a speed train that runs from Messina to Pretoria, but how does it help the ever-growing population of Gauteng to deal, with the challenges that is there? This is why I'm saying we need a plan that looks beyond where we are right now. It looks to the future and say, how do we invest in that? And how do we build the infrastructure, bulk infrastructure that will be able to then take care of that?
Yeah. Nico?
Well, I just amazed. We often talk about we need more water. We need to increase the water license. We can increase the water license, but it cannot be done without additional infrastructure. The reason being, we cannot increase what's currently in the pipes.
Gotcha.
The pipes are old. The slightest increase in barrage and pressure, and the pipes, the pipes will pop. So you need to invest on things, basic things, small things like inlets, pressure release valves, so that at night when there's low usage, you can reduce the outflow. And because most burst, incidentally, happens in between 10 and 4 in the morning, when there's not much usage, so there's build-up of pressure. So we need those valves, those simple, small little things that needs to be done. That's what we can do immediately. But as Solly said, we need to get the Premier around the table so he can explain. We need to get his MEC around the table so he can explain how they will assist municipalities and not just rubber stamp.
Nico, for everybody watching at home, how can they get involved in the water? #No Dry Taps Gauteng water campaign.
I would just urge them to sign our petition and to follow us and see what we suggest and where we come from. We are not experts ourselves, but we've got a lot of experience. We are not going to tell residents what to do or what not to do. We are very cautious about that, but we do need to be aware that if we do not abide by the level 1 restrictions, although there are no penalties in place, we don't abide by that, all of us are going to lose out in the end.
And Nico, tell us, where can we find the petition?
That's online. It's on, maybe Solly, do you have the website?
It's on the DA website. It's on the DA's website. It's also, if you Google #No Dry Taps GP, you should be able to then find the link, to the petition.
Yeah, and make sure you follow us on social media, because we will be posting all of the links relating to all the petitions. The water petition is one of them. Nico, your final message to the viewers at home.
Just remember, it is not your fault. It's not your fault that we are in this predicament, but we are urging you to abide by the rules, by the level 1 restrictions, not to water your garden outside of the 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. time frame, and just be aware that we have a challenge. Sign that petition.
Yeah, Solly?
Well, we can complain all we want, but we can all join hands and come together and say this is our problem. Yes, in your area you might be sitting with water that is flowing. But guess what? A couple of months down the line, if we all don't stand up and say, let's all do something about this, you will sit with the problem. Initially, people thought that the electricity challenge was not a challenge for everybody, and it became a nationwide problem that really robbed people of so many opportunities for work. It robbed people of their lives in certain instances when hospitals were going, without electricity and oxygen could not be pumped and so on and so forth. And it becomes a bigger challenge for everybody if we're all not going to hold hands. And we're asking you, hold hands with us, sign our petition, come up, send us videos where there is water pipes that are best, where there is dry water pipes, and remember to use the hashtag no dry taps GP or no dry taps Gauteng. Let's all come up in our numbers and show and join hands in this challenge, and let's put pressure on government to do what needs to be done, because ultimately, if nothing gets to be done, you and me are doomed to fail, and there will be a situation that we might not even be able to then come out of at the end of the day.
Yeah, there you have it, Gauteng. We've just laid down exactly what the problems are in Gauteng when it comes to the water crisis. As was said, please make sure you go out and sign our petition. The more people that sign this petition, the more weight we have when we go and speak to the playmakers that make the decisions, to show them that it is not just the DA that is complaining about the water crisis. It is residents. It is every single person in Gauteng that is affected by this water crisis that must be heard. Your voice means something, and you can put your voice towards this campaign by going out and signing the petition. As Sally said, send us your videos, send it on social media using the hashtag #NoDryTapsGP or #NoDryTapsGauteng. My name is Nazli Sharif. Thank you so much for joining us. Sharp and away.